Oh, we're live really quick. You didn't get an intro, but that's all right. Hey, welcome to Real Talk. I'm your host, Paul Britton. With me this evening is Sergio.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, Sergio,
It's,
look,
it's been a while.
it's been way too long. You were supposed to
Yeah,
come on for I don't remember what, and you just either forgot or didn't see it or something happened.
there was something. Yeah, I
Life got
remember
in the way.
recently. Yeah, that's really
And
what it is.
but now you just kind of like popped into my DMs, you slid into my DMs and
Yes,
said,
I did.
hey Paul, I kind of want to see the Crow movie and talk to you about it. And I was like, all right, Sergio. No,
Uh,
I was obviously super thrilled.
yeah, no, and I'm glad I did because I had a feeling I was going to have a feeling. So,
It's all right. So let's just jump right into it. So
yeah,
I'm gonna start by asking you, what is your relationship to the Brandon Lee starring cult classic from 1994?
it is absolutely one of my favorite films ever.
Okay,
And unfortunate that we lost Brandon Lee as a result of that film.
for sure.
But in terms of the film itself, um, we could talk about everything from how the film was put together. We could talk about the acting. We could talk about the music. Phenomenal.
Okay,
Um, it literally is one of those movies that I've owned on VHS. I've owned on DVD. I own that digitally. Like every time there's a version, I'm gonna buy it because
okay,
I always want it nearby and handy because I absolutely love it.
okay.
Um, and just it's got a special place in my heart, this film.
All right. I just full disclosure, I went into this one blind. I had never seen the original.
Really?
I had never seen
I
it.
am
Now,
shocked, Paul Britton.
I did go back and watch the original after
Yeah.
seeing this one because I wanted, because it was like I was in a unique position,
Uh-huh.
and normally, not for nothing, but you're the one that goes into these things blind.
Yeah.
So but this time I got to go in blind. And
Wow.
so I watched the new one,
Yeah.
and then I went back and watched the original that night.
Am I
And
okay to be shocked by that?
absolutely. Um and here's why.
Mhm.
Not my thing. Like
Okay.
in the early 90s, I I was not into at all the entire Gen X angsty
Sure.
movies. That just
Okay.
what I just didn't care.
Okay.
Like I had seen Heathers, I had seen Reality Bites. I had seen all of those, and I'm just
Mhm.
like, these people are lame. I don't relate to them at all.
Okay. And
And
I'm
so
with you on that.
by the time by the time The Crow came around,
Mhm.
first of all, like everybody else, by the way, I had no relationship to Brandon Lee. Like, I'm sorry, Brandon Lee was not a big star. Like,
No, not at all.
and
I think he had
his
one other movie of minor note.
Rapid Fire was as
Yes.
far as I could
Yeah.
tell, the only other one that was, even remotely that I'd heard of before was Rapid Fire.
Not a bad
And
film. So,
and so I just didn't have a relationship,
sure,
and
sure.
like it felt like at the time a movie that was like the only reason why people are going to see this is because they feel bad for Brandon Lee, and it just,
Okay.
but then it was one of those movies that was on basic cable all the time,
All the time. Yeah.
constantly. It was, it just constantly on.
Sure.
And by then I was just like, well, I can see this anytime I want.
And you
And
didn't.
I just never actually, I had seen, like, obviously because it was on basic cable a lot,
Mhm.
I had seen pieces.
Okay.
And it's not a movie where individual pieces do it any justice.
Right.
It's a mood piece,
Yep.
and you need to be in on it from Jump Street and just sit and watch it. And
Yeah.
so the pieces that I caught never really made me think, oh, I need to see this all the way through.
Gotcha.
So that's where I was. So let's start with the for the new one.
Uh-huh.
Trailers. First trailer comes out. What's your reaction?
Well, and before we do that, will
Okay.
we have an opportunity to ask you to tell me what your thoughts on the original were?
I want to I kind of feel
If
like I want to do a compare contrast.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, okay, I'll wait till when you're ready.
Right.
Okay, so and purely because of my history with this film. First trailer comes out, and the first trailer the only trailer, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
The only trailer I saw was when it was already on its way to theaters. So it wasn't like I didn't see any kind of like teaser if there was. I and again, you know that here lately my trips to the theater are not as frequent as
For sure.
before. So I saw the trailer in the last couple of months and immediately was like, oh, like I won't say horrified,
Okay.
pretty close.
Okay.
Because I thought to myself as I watched it, this is going to be too clean of a film for what because I'm familiar with the graphic novel as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Um, and I'll expound on that because it's not as obvious as you might think it what I'm gonna say. But um so my first reaction to the trailer was like, this is too polished
Okay.
for a story that is nothing but grit
Okay.
in both its graphic novel form and in the original film,
Sure.
right? And so I was like very, very apprehensive. But it's what motivated me to know if there's a film I need to talk to Paul about, this is going to be one of them
Okay.
because of that comparison contrast that we like to do.
Sure. Sure.
So I was not at all pleased with the trailer. I was not looking forward to the film, but I knew this is perfect reel to reel talk fodder.
Yeah.
The
It
person
really is.
this with is Paul. So.
You weren't at all like, oh well, Bill Skarsgård usually does a really good job. Maybe this will turn out okay.
No, because I've only seen him in it, and if it's other things, it's probably not stuff that I could name off the top of my head, you
Okay.
know. And not to say that he doesn't stand out to me in like, oh, that's the guy that was in this movie that was horrible, you know.
Okay.
He's just a familiar name
Okay.
and in roles that I've appreciated, you know.
Okay.
But no, I didn't have and I didn't even go into my brain to the point of, well, he's no Brandon Lee because
Right.
that's not a fair assessment in any iteration of this film because there's been sequels, I'm sure you know,
Right.
to that 1994 classic that didn't ever need to happen.
Yeah.
So
The sequels are notorious straight to
yeah,
blockbuster fodder. So,
yeah, they could
but
easily. I mean, come on, when Edward Furlong is,
that's what
one
you
of the
get when you have a cult classic. Like
sure,
the cult classics lend themselves to, oh, people who don't know better will rent this, and so let's just put it out on video.
it will draw, and frankly, the only reason I ever watched the sequels was because
Oh,
I I sometimes go down this sort of sadomasochistic path of like, let me see what these sequels are like, and knowing they're going to be bad,
right.
knowing they're going to be bad. In fact, I'll just throw this in as an aside, and you can toss it off like I know you will properly. I watched the two extended director's cut of Rebel Moon, both 1 and 2, and
Oh,
I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? Why did I do this to myself? So that's
I
kind of the reaction to the Crow
I
sequels.
I literally saw that those were coming out. Like, those are two things I am not going to watch. I don't need to see those. So,
I had never seen the second film. And
okay,
so I thought, well, if I'm gonna watch them, I couldn't remember anything about the first one, so I'm like, well, if I'm gonna do this,
yeah.
and yeah, I was like, what am I punishing myself for? But
I
but that's
specifically said I'm not doing this.
yeah.
I am
So
not doing this.
that was the same reaction I had to the sequels
Okay.
of from the 1994 classic. So
Okay, sure. I look, I can appreciate the completist desires of a collector.
yeah,
So
not all franchises, but some I go down
sure,
that
sure.
rabbit
I mean,
hole.
especially
Yeah,
if you love the original as much as you did.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So did you go see this with Mr. Kramer or on your
Nope.
own?
No, I went on my own. I went on
Okay.
my own, and it was just this past Sunday afternoon.
Okay.
And I went in. I really went in with this idea of like, I've got to be fair here. I
Okay.
can't. I can't let my love of the first one
Yeah.
taint my view.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it was a solo experience, and frankly, Almost completely solo because there was only one other person in the theater.
Yeah,
So
it did
this movie
not
is
do.
not making money. No,
It did not do well.
it did not.
Okay, so uh, a we're gonna start from with the first act because one of the really interesting things about the reboot is I was sitting and watching the movie
Mhm.
and watching, and then there was a line uttered, and I'd say, "Oh, that's the end of Act One," and then sure enough, like immediately as that line was uttered, it was just the classic, "Oh, we'll be together forever," and it's like, nope, that's not what's gonna happen. So that's the end of
Yep.
Act One.
Yep.
Um, and then I'm watching, and it's like, uh, another line is uttered, and I'm like, "Oh, that's the end of Act Two."
Okay.
Like it really, and knowing that it was made from a graphic novel, I almost in my head imagine if this was a perfect retelling of the graphic novel, it'd be like the graphic novel would be three parts, and like the first part, second part,
Yeah.
third part, almost. And because I mean, it was just that like obvious, like you
Sure.
just that like jarring, like okay, this is a clear delineating point
Yes. Yes.
where basically the original movie just took all of Act One and said, "Fuck this, we don't need it."
Yeah.
Like
Right. Yeah.
the the
Okay. Yeah.
the original movie, it's like it's so jarringly different from
Yeah.
Jump Street,
Absolutely.
where it's just like there is just no need to develop any characters in the original
Mm,
movie. It's just that we're jumping right in, and you better be ready to go, Jack. Whereas
absolutely.
whereas the first movie, or the reboot, I should say, feels really compelled to make sure that you care about the Eric character, and
Right.
feel doesn't rely on the audience just to be like, okay, I'll trust that this is the good guy. It's like, look, he's a flawed guy, but he is the good guy. He's good
Right.
at heart, and makes you really want to care about the relationship. And I'm going to say there is something to be said about
Hmm.
developing a relationship. Like, it's one
Sure.
thing to just jump in on a character, but it is so difficult to just jump in on a relationship and make you give a damn. And
Right.
and I'm not speaking to the efficacy, the efficientness, how efficient the reboot was in establishing that relationship, but the original did not. I mean, tried to do it, hinted at it in flashbacks, which just
Right.
doesn't carry the same weight, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But that's not what that movie was going for either.
Right. No. No.
So, yeah,
So okay. So this is where you'll be interested for me to expound a bit on my earlier comment, because
right.
when I say I was familiar with the graphic novel, I knew of the art. I
Okay.
had seen images from the graphic novel,
Okay.
and was really taken by how well the 1994 adaptation of the graphic novel, at least from the images I'd seen,
Mhm.
because and they were all of Eric Draven, right?
Yeah.
But I had never read the graphic novel. It was six
Okay.
parts.
Okay.
Okay, so Sunday I go watch 2024's The Crow, and immediately I'm sitting there going, maybe I need to read the graphic novel, because one of these two movies
One of these things
is
is not like
not
the other.
following the
Yeah.
graphic novel. It can't
Yeah.
be. And maybe, here's the funny part. Maybe it was the 1994 one. And
Yeah.
this instead, because this is what happens often in reboots, is you harken back to the original material so you can have an original story,
Right.
right?
Right.
Don't ask me to name films that do that, because I can't right now off the top of my head. But it literally went, before I left the theater, I went to Amazon and got the graphic novel on my Kindle,
Okay.
proceeded to read it during work, sorry. And
I didn't hear that.
Paul, the graphic novel, remember how you just described 1994's version
Yeah.
and how it just launched forward with
Yeah.
no shits to be given about character exposition?
Yeah.
That's the graphic novel.
Interesting. Okay.
Like, the 1994 version is the graphic novel.
Okay,
Okay,
interesting.
a little bit of character, changes and stuff. Like
Right.
the leader is different, but no, and you get the same. Remember the 1994 film? We meet Shelley only through flashback and only briefly.
Okay.
The girlfriend,
Right.
that was also murdered.
Right.
And in the graphic novel, you don't even get what happened to the two until
Okay.
the fifth of six books.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah. But that's not
the
surprising for
first
a graphic
four,
novel. That's
of
not for,
course, of course. No,
yeah.
no, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
But like the movie,
Yeah.
the first four, it's like who's dying next, right?
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know, and the film itself plays out, and you through the action learn the story,
Right.
right?
Right.
Okay. Having said that, I don't know where this movie came from because I even went back and read synopsises of other Crow related works that
Uh-huh.
have come out since that original. And there's a really great, interesting backstory to the creation of that graphic novel. The artist wrote it because
His
his girlfriend had been
and
killed by a drunk driver.
right.
And it was
Right.
his outlet
Right.
for all the guilt and rage he felt. Because as
Yeah.
he puts it, The Crow, the graphic novel, is a movie about forgiveness of oneself, right?
Okay.
All that to say, I don't know where this script came from because I can't find it in any other iteration of the
Mm.
story, nor can I find it in any other iteration of the sequels.
Okay.
And I'm like, so then when it's over, I'm like, what where did this story come from?
Mhm.
And why did we feel like we needed to create an origin story
Yeah.
unless you're going to be planning sequels, which this movie reeks and screams of
A
at
bit.
the
A
conclusion,
bit.
you
Yeah.
know?
A bit for sure.
And so then I say all that to say, take the title off of it,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with the story.
Okay.
Like it's not I but as long as it's called The Crow, I'll be left with, but from where?
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
No, for sure. And that leads to the next part, which is the next major deviation are the villains, the bad guys.
Oh,
And
big time.
the original movie is like this is where the original hasn't aged well, just because it feels like it's 1994. Like
Oh
the
yeah.
bad guys are like just nondescript,
Cookie cutter. Yeah.
cookie cutter, big city crime people that don't care about society and just hate
Right.
everybody and just shit on society with,
Right.
absolutely no motivation or anything else. Whereas this one, it's like the bad guy is motivated by just wanting to live forever, and it is basically a servant of Satan in essence, and
Yeah.
is feeding Satan innocent souls.
Right.
And
Nothing
that
to do with the novel.
okay, and on its own is also like that is like really kind of super 2024 too.
Oh,
Like
big time.
it's just
Yeah.
both of these movies, the bad guys are just like this, you know anybody who's going to watch either of these movies 10 years later and has no frame of reference is just going to be like, what is going on? Like, where is
But
this even
listen,
coming from?
tell me that those two actors aren't in the "Hey, it's that guy" club.
For sure,
If you think back to
both of them.
right? And
Yes.
but they're perfect for that role when you can so blatantly see that this is a vehicle for Bill Skarsgård. That was a vehicle for Brandon Lee. That was going to be
Right.
the movie that was going to break him into this big action star, you
Right.
know? And so you can have nondescript actors play these cookie cutter roles
Right.
because in the case of 1994, it was the action because that's what Brandon Lee was going to be.
Right.
And then in this one, I don't quite know because there is absolutely no connection as to the storyline. Like, I'll tell you that in the 1994 version, that again, straight from the graphic novel, there's no Devil's Night. There's no in the graphic novel, right?
Right.
But there's again, if you called this movie something else and I'd gone to see it, I would have been okay with it.
Yeah.
But you're trying to sell it as this thing that it just isn't.
Right. And it's interesting because the the 1994 one lends itself to being a 90-minute movie in its
Oh,
simplicity.
sure.
Its
Absolutely.
simplicity is just so like, okay, no need to develop, no need for backstory, no need to explain.
Hmm.
Whereas this one does require a little bit more explanation, a little bit more holding of hand, and a little bit more of showing and telling
Right.
that honestly, it bogs it down a little bit. Like
Oh, sure.
the original, where it serves well is the simplicity. This one, but the flip side is one of the things that the new one introduced that I genuinely appreciated and liked
Hmm.
was, well, I'm just going to call it purgatory.
Sure.
The Harry Potter train station where, you know,
Yeah.
where the lost souls are going, and
Hmm.
it's a way station. You can decide which way do you want to go.
Right.
You know, and I really liked that. And
No, it was
I
cool.
I felt like if that had been in the original, just a little bit of
Right.
what the hell is Brandon Lee doing back? Is this really that big of a thing? Whereas
Right.
this one, it's like, okay, there is a supernatural power that is heavily vested in Eric going back because something's out of whack, and this in
Right.
this supernatural realm, and getting rid of this the basically the avatar of Satan from the earth plane is really important. And I'm
Right.
not saying the original needed that much, but like the idea of this way station was really cool.
It gave it an interesting twist for sure,
Yeah.
because the '94 version was purely a revenge story. That's it.
Right. Right.
There was no depth to it beyond that point.
Right.
And this one, if you're going to present this kind of villain, then yeah, there needs to be some kind of comeuppance, you know.
Right.
And
And I appreciate having this is why we're sending him back.
right,
You know,
right. There was a clear,
yeah.
yeah, but I think that's the part of the graphic novel that they tried to, I guess, hook to this story and say, hey, let's develop this, because even the original author didn't develop to that level that
Okay,
the film
cool.
did, you
All right.
know. So it's a very I loved that aspect of the film, but it is purely the creation of the writers of this film.
Right.
So
Um Next, let's talk about the action sequences, because the 1994 movie feels like a 1994 movie, where
absolutely,
if
yeah,
you are used to what to action movies today, and you go back and watch the 1994 movie, you watch it like,
it's a
does
gothic
this even
diehard.
have any action scenes? Like it's very like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, they're not big sequences.
Whereas this one, and I had to speak to my shop steward for the movie review union, and I am told I am required as part of the union contract to mention the opera house fight scene in this
Yes,
movie.
I agree.
This movie features obviously several fight scenes, but there is one huge set piece takes place in an opera house. Obviously, it has stairs. You
Hmm.
cannot have a post-Atomic Blonde fight scene that doesn't have stairs.
Right.
So, thank you, Atomic Blonde, the gift that keeps on giving. And beautiful stairs, and
Yeah.
just like we are fucking going to be a rated R movie. Fuck you.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. There was
Some of the
That's
most
probably the
vicious
fastest conversation in the pre-production.
Yeah, some of the most vicious kills I can remember seeing in a
Indeed,
movie.
this was John Wick esque
Oh my god, times
in because that's what, like, you made a perfect point. That's action movies today.
yeah,
It's all these glorious action sets and
yes,
pieces that
yes,
that's what's going to hold it. That's where I think this movie made a very definitive decision, not just to have a rated R rating,
right.
but to say this movie will rise or fall on the action, and the story is just going to come along for the ride.
Yeah, and
Is
that
my
was a
thought.
mistake. That's
It was a big
because
mistake.
I thought the action was fine. The action was
Absolutely, I
I'm
agree.
totally down with the action, but you gotta spend a little bit more time tidying up
Yeah.
the story and
Well, and
you
I
know,
think they needed to spend less time on the story of the two,
yeah,
Eric and Shelley, because
yeah,
okay, we get it. We get it.
yeah,
Like develop someone else now at this point.
yeah.
So
They want
because Paul, did I miss like who this villain rogue was? Like other than what you've speculated, the you're deducing that.
no.
There
They explain it. They explain it.
when? What did I miss? I mean, I see the early sequence, I
They're
okay. I came in, sorry, I forgot to mention this part. I came in late, but it was at the point where Shelley's being brought into the institution.
okay,
So, or no, I'm sorry. It was right before that when there's a kill on screen by the villain.
right.
And so, how much did I
It's during
miss?
that scene when he explains it.
Who he is?
Yes,
Okay, then my
because
fault for missing
he
it.
says to her, he
He says something
basically
about
says to
700 years.
I've been doing this for 300 years, and you would think that any soul would do, but he needs somebody innocent
Yeah,
like you.
okay. Yeah, I guess I was just so like, all right, sure. Why? Because honestly, when he did the what I'll call
The
the
whisper.
Mordor speech,
Okay,
uh the black
nice,
what is it?
very
The
good.
black
This,
speech?
yeah,
Yeah, I was like, okay, what is that? Like because again, I tried to not think of the 1994 version, but I'm like,
yeah,
no, okay, we're already departing and it's just
yeah,
been 5 minutes.
yeah. Well,
So,
this one leads into the supernatural.
big time.
Okay,
Big time.
where I, this movie would have been better served by just being like, we are also going to make a 90-minute movie,
Mhm.
and we're going to be jumping right in, and we're going to be using flashbacks. Like,
Yeah,
I would,
just don't call it The Crow.
you can keep your villain development. You can keep all of that.
Yeah.
Jump right in, use flashbacks, and just be like everybody's. It's Bill Skarsgård. He's got tattooed face.
Yeah.
We're good to go.
I agree.
People are ready.
Were
But
we supposed to buy that he's been in the institution for a while?
I'm. I mean,
Because if
a
so,
while. I don't know.
where did he get these tattoos?
Well, no, I don't. I don't think we were supposed to
Okay.
believe he's been in that
All right.
long.
Okay. That was
Yeah.
that.
No.
Though sadly, those are the kind of things that stayed in my head. Like,
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
and it tells
that's
you,
what a
you know.
movie misses if that's what you're worried about. Um. Okay, so that's the villain. Or that's the fight scenes. I mean, we already did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
That opera house scene is it's
it
going to go down as one of my favorite sequences this year.
yeah, it's so good, but is it enough for the movie? And I mean, for me, yes. Like, give me one scene like that, and I'm just like, okay, money well spent. I am fine.
Yeah.
But
And
for
perfectly placed for a 90-minute film.
absolute, yeah, no,
Because you
that's a
knew
very valid thing.
you know how sometimes there's movies with these massive action pieces and you're like, we still have 45 minutes. You
Yeah,
know, this one, if there's one thing I want to give credit to this movie for is the storytelling sequence. You knew where you were, like you said, act one, act two, act three, and you knew that once you got to this point, there ain't much left to do, so
right,
let's get to it.
right,
So I applaud
right.
them for that sequencing.
Man, as soon as Act 3 kicked off, as soon as as soon as that the end of Act 2 was announced
Yep,
and they started Act 3, it was just like, all right, I got my seatbelt on, I'm ready to go.
that's right. We're on the
Um,
downhill slide here.
I want to take a half step backwards, and we were
Sure.
talking about how I just wish they had made this a 90-minute movie. I wish they kind of had made the relationship, but obviously they felt the need to have a strong female lead, which
Yes.
I'm perfectly okay with.
Mhm.
God, I wish 1994 didn't feel like they always had to have a kid in a movie. Like,
Yeah.
could we go back to 1994 and just whisper to somebody, "Hey, you don't need to have kids in every movie. It's okay." Like, what
Yeah.
was that character?
I know. And when you read the graphic novel, you realize she's on maybe 3 pages of 6 books. Like it
Oh,
was not it was just yeah. Yeah. I and frankly, the cat is also in the graphic novel.
okay,
And the cat gets more screen time in the or page time.
okay,
I yeah, I think there was a point because Brandon Lee was very good friends with the author.
Okay.
And so it was probably just an issue of trying to stay true to the elements of the story. But you're right, that piece and that character ends up in one of the sequels,
Okay.
and
Ugh.
you literally feel like, okay,
Please don't do
like,
that.
right, yeah, no, you're absolutely, I'm
Oh
totally with you on that thought.
God.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Neither here nor there.
yeah, seriously,
And for all of that, with the opera house scene, man, the final fight with the big bad guy, I don't care. Like it just the the air is sucked out.
big
It's
time.
like the this has to be more interesting. There has to be something else
Hmm.
going on. And this is where the original, relying on, the crow that is the sight
Right,
and
the
the
companion, yeah, the guide,
everything to
yeah,
Brandon Lee in the original, where this is in this one, the crow's ever present but not as important, whereas in the
yeah,
original it's very important. And I feel like if they had swapped out the relationship with building the crow up a little bit,
hmm,
and just brought that in
hmm,
and sold that
yeah,
as the crow needs this done. This is
right,
why the crow has brought you back, and the crow is going to play a part in this, in this. And it just, because I just don't know what I don't I it just felt super anticlimactic after that
no,
opera
absolutely,
scene.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I felt like, in fact, I'm not gonna lie to you, Paul. I can't remember that sequence. Like I know he was like the way he ends, or the way that the villain is dispatched. To me, again,
There's a
that's a
sword
sequel
fight.
point.
Yeah.
It's you're right, but I'm saying there's no, because of the character you've created, there there can't be the end that the villain, or the main villain in the 1994 version met,
Right.
because he was simply a man. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I don't think of the final sequence, the final boss, so to speak,
Yeah.
as having been anything memorable.
And and it ends in the purgatory Harry Potter train station.
Right.
And
A little bit.
um and I actually like that part of it. Like the
Yeah.
way the way it's like, all right, we're bringing this guy in, and there's the awesome line from the trailer where it's like, you don't know what kind of hell you're you're due for, setting yourself up
Right,
for.
right.
And then he says, yeah, I do. And that's just a really cool movie. Perfect delivery, just like that. That's a great moment. It's like the movie just really needed a whole heck of a lot more high charisma moments
Sure.
from Bill Skarsgård, who's clearly obviously available and able to do these high charisma moments.
Oh, yeah.
Contrary wise, like there in the 1994 movie, the climactic scene has a lot of like, why is Eric dancing around? Like,
Yeah,
why are we doing comedy shtick? Like, that's
yeah.
so you flip flop them, and it's like, I don't feel like the climax of the 1994 movie was any better. Like,
Gotcha.
honestly,
Okay. Yeah.
like,
I mean, there was one, but it wasn't. It's that the flaw in The Crow, the 1994 version, is I don't feel like it ever gets out of first gear
right.
across the entirety of the film. It
Yeah.
tells the story, and I like it for reasons of nostalgia.
Yeah.
But if we look at it from today, yeah, it doesn't. It's just sort of one line,
Yeah.
and it's a fast line,
Yeah.
and then it's done.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no one's ever going to be able to say that, unless he would have gotten better. But Brandon Lee was never going to be one for charisma.
Right.
Although he does deliver some cool lines. But
He
no,
delivers cool
Skarsgård,
lines, and he seems enigmatic, and he seems mysterious, and that totally
yeah,
works for the role. It's just like all of a sudden he's like doing this pantomime shit, and
yeah.
it's like, what are we doing here?
Why?
Like, it
Yeah, it
didn't
was
make any
very,
sense. Like,
very
you're about,
stilted.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Skarsgård, make that story this story,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Skarsgård would have elevated,
Yeah.
you know, I still think it would have done bad box office, unfortunately, but
Yeah,
um,
like, and bottom line is that nobody's asking for a reboot of The Crow. Like,
right,
you know,
right. I always
let's
thought
just
it
be
was one
honest.
that you just leave alone.
Yeah. Like it. Absolutely everybody wanted somebody to come in and actually make a good telling of it. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Nosferatu, which Skarsgård's gonna be in Christmas from David Eggers.
really?
Everybody what's
Okay.
that? You didn't know about
I
that?
I didn't know about that.
Go look for the trailer.
I
I
have okay, I will.
just perfection. So excited.
Yeah,
Um, but The Crow, it just was like, okay, you did something, but why? Like,
yeah,
there were ideas here that you could have just made your own thing, or even
right.
just make it like, don't use the same characters' names. Just be like Crow the rebooting, and just like, call it something different. Like,
Crow
make it an
adjacent.
illusion, but put it in the Crow universe, but not.
Yeah.
Don't pretend like that they're the same characters.
No, no. Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And the thing with I think The Crow 1994 is a cult classic because it's the kind of movie that becomes a cult classic. You know,
Right.
no one was ever going to say in 1994 that this was one of the top 10 movies of the year. It surely was not. I loved it for again the cult nature of it.
Yeah.
I always jokingly called it the Gothic Die Hard,
Yeah.
and it served its purpose. But then
Yeah.
that was
It's
it. Leave it alone.
If you were alive in 1994 and over the age of like 9, you would just go
Mhm.
watch that movie and be like, "Oh yeah, this is from 1994." I mean,
Sure.
Nirvana, grunge is
Oh
everything.
yeah.
Goth is just absolutely controlling, like that. It just feels like a 1994 movie, and so that's going to be super warm comfort food for anybody at that time. I
Yeah,
get
I'm pulling up films of 1994. Okay. And right away on the popular 1994 movies list is The Crow.
it. Yeah,
This was the year of Shawshank Redemption.
yeah.
Okay. Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction, sure.
Natural Born Killers.
Right.
I mean, there were some great movies that came out this year, but if you went and saw some of these great movies and you had also seen The Crow, you were going to remember The Crow.
Yeah, yeah,
You're not going to remember it as having been better than the ones I've named. And
yeah.
then there's Maverick, but uh, but it would stick with you.
Right.
When this year is over, this movie will not be anywhere on my radar.
It just won't be, and it just
Yeah,
won't, on anybody's really, and it
right.
shouldn't be. Um, but that opera house scene will be popping up on
Oh,
YouTube clips.
clip after clip after clip. Absolutely. And hey, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. If it comes up on streaming, there's a point where I'll probably watch it again. Not because it was great, but
Yeah,
because it had good action.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
Maybe fast skip. I mean,
skip to the
Act 1 is so useless in this movie.
no, yeah, I
It is
agree.
just so skip worthy. Like
Yeah.
oh my god.
I
It's
don't want to
fine.
say this would have been a good short film, but this might have been a good short.
It would have been a good
I
yeah,
just I want to be able to go back in time to the table where it was decided that this was going to happen and just hear the discussion.
yeah.
Because again, someone sat down and said, okay, not only are we going to reboot it, but we're going to come up with our own original story that has nothing to do with the source material.
Right.
And we're going to call it The Crow because we want to,
Yeah.
and
Again, I really have no problems putting in that universe, but
yeah,
but like they really should have said, you know what, let's just put it in the universe. Let's,
yeah,
build on the mythos of this idea that crows bring people back, because
yeah,
it's obvious with the voiceover that's done by the little girl in the original and by the creepy Middle Eastern guy in this one,
yep.
that it's the exact same. It was really funny to watch one after the other, because hearing the little girl say exact same things,
It's
that
word for word.
it's word for
Yeah,
word lifted, and it's like,
absolutely.
that's awesome. I love it. We don't need to pretend like these are the same Eric and Shelley, like
Right.
but it's fine.
Yeah. The thing overall for me in terms of source material and so forth and so on is this film, I can see it as someone saying, okay, let's pull it. But
Yeah.
if they had really gone to the source material and read it, there are two articles within the now published, there's a book that is literally all of the graphic novels put together in one. And there's a fantastic forward and then a coda that the author writes explaining the mythos of the crow and where he pulled it from, and how throughout most of the eras of history, whether it's the Vikings, or whether it's the Egyptians, or whether it's the crow has always resembled this wayfarer between the now and the afterlife. And it's such a great article that he wrote to
Yeah.
explain why the crow, right?
Right.
Because, and again, just one more interesting tidbit from the graphic novels, you don't even really get the crow into any sort of conversation until the last of the 6 books.
Oh wow,
And
really?
so, yeah, because again, you're learning everything in flashback,
Okay.
right?
Interesting.
But
Interesting.
that's when you realize there have been images of the crow here and there throughout the first 5 books,
Okay.
but you finally, it's the reveal of like what this journey is about, because all you're seeing is carnage being wreaked by Eric Draven, and
Okay.
you're little by little learning why. And then the big reveal is this was never about her. It was about you reaching a point of forgiving yourself because you blame yourself for her death,
Okay.
even though you died too.
Yeah.
It's and so yeah, so this movie completely missed that whole
Okay.
that whole
Missed the
point.
memo.
Yeah, big time. So
It's, uh, it's never happened, but if Frank Miller had ever decided I want to make a movie based off somebody else's graphic novel rather than my own, um, I feel like he could have done a really good version of this.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Started uttering the sentence, I'm like, I know where he's going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen yeah,
Yeah. If
yeah,
yeah, but also
yeah.
he knows better than to just go back and make this. But that's
Sure, absolutely.
so,
Yeah, no, that is the mistake of this film, is that it
yeah,
didn't really need to be.
right. Yeah. Hey,
Here we
people
are.
make movies that nobody's asking for all the time, as
Yep.
evidenced by the flop that was Borderlands. Okay.
Gosh.
Um,
Oh man.
here at Real to Real Talk, we do not give stars, we give out tacos.
Yep.
And if we feel like something deserves more than just a couple tacos or whatever, we add a little something extra called guacamole, and rather than a half a taco. Why? Because nobody eats a half a fucking taco. So, Sergio, taco rating for The Crow reboot
Okay.
2024. Where are you?
Yeah. I really wanted to give this 3 tacos, but
Wow.
I think based on everything I've talked about, because
Yeah.
I don't think I'm cheating by comparing this to the original, because now that I know that the source material, if you're going to do a movie
Yeah.
based on something that I can go back and find the source material, and even if you're doing a riff on it,
Right.
it makes sense, I
Yeah.
can go with it. But you created a movie and made your own story.
Yeah.
And that to me is the fault in this film.
Yeah. And it's not
Because there are
better. It's not
exactly, it doesn't
demonstratively
improve
better.
upon the story. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
And so because of that, it only gets 2 plus guac, because
Okay.
again, there's that one fantastic action sequence,
So good.
and they committed to making this film the violent carnival that it was.
Yeah.
And there are some flashes of good, but not enough to get to 3. So
Yeah.
2 and guac.
I am also at 2 plus guac, and it's a two taco movie, and the opera house scene gets the guac.
Yeah,
And my favorite part about it is that the opera house scene is also like so comically long and completely unnecessarily long, but it's still so good
absolutely.
that I don't,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, I just wish the boss fight had
Right.
felt remotely like
Yeah.
that.
I felt like
Um,
they had put everything into the sequence leading up to it, and we're
yeah,
like, I think we're out of stuff.
yeah, we're out of time. All
We're
right, we
out of
gotta.
squibs.
All right, wrap it up. Wrap it up. Um, have you seen either Jackpot or The Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat on Hulu,
I have
on
not.
Prime or Hulu? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead
I
and
have
boot
not.
you.
All right.
Sergio, it's wonderful having you back.
Thank you for having me.
Open door anytime.
We will be
Uh,
talking.
all right, cool.
All
Have
right.
a
Thanks, Paul.
wonderful rest of your day.
You do the same. Thanks so
All right,
much.
bye. All right, welcome. I'm just gonna really quick. I got two movies. First, we're gonna start with the John Cena and Aquafina starring Jackpot. If you've ever watched any episode here where I've had to talk about John Cena, you know I fucking hate John Cena. Guess what? Him doing a straight up comedy with a little bit of action with Aquafina doesn't help with my distaste for John Cena at all. So this is a movie that whose premise is basically somebody read the Stephen King short story The Running Man novella, not short story, the Stephen King novella The Running Man, written under the name John Bachman, and said, oh, I want to do that but as a comedy. And it's like, it's not funny. And the conceit behind this movie is so mean spirited and so bitter and so condescending and so basically there's a like the government decides that it can make money off of a lottery. By the way, that's no. And but there's a twist: you can kill the person who wins the lottery and take their winnings. Like, why? Like, how is that causing more people to participate in a lot? It doesn't matter. Like, no, stop it. Stop it. The premise of this movie pisses me off. The premise of this movie pisses me off. The fact that John Cena is in it annoys the crap out of me. Don't watch this. It's one taco. It's garbage. Just absolute total garbage. Please don't watch it. Although I'll always say watch stuff, but watch it and then be like, oh, I should have listened to Paul. Next week, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have the Supremes at Earl's All You Can Eat on now streaming on Hulu. Now this is just look. If you watch this movie, okay, the Supremes is not the actual Supremes, like the band from the Supreme, but it's a group of teenage girls growing up in the 60s who call themselves the Supremes. Three girls call themselves the Supremes because they are just so opposite from the actual Supremes, where they're big, and it's like these are just it's established in the opening voiceover of the movie that these are three women whose beginnings are strange and low. Just they're born under tough situations, and they need to work their way out of it from there. And it's and it's three African American women growing up in the 60s, and then it takes you, like, there's a lot of time hopping into the 90s and present, and it's into the 90s, not the present, but into the 90s, 30 years later type of thing, and here they are as adults, and so you're hopping between. It's a book. And it was a book. It's based on a book. You watch the movie and you're like, oh, I'm watching a book. Every once in a while you watch a movie and you're like, oh, I'm watching a play. This movie, you're watching the movie and you're like, oh, I'm watching a book. Fantastic characters, fantastic acting all around. It feels like a book. It's just like, okay, now look, it's cute. It's cute. Wrong fucking word, Paul. It's heartfelt. It's sincere. It's not for me, and that's okay, but I appreciated it. I'm going to give it 3 tacos. Why? Cause it's done really well. It's everything that, I want to see in movies right now, which is, make more movies for adults. It's okay. And you know, if you want to release them in the theater, that's cool. Instead, we're going to get them on streaming. That's cool too, as long as they're being made. And I support that. And so that's why we're giving this one 3 tacos. Worth it. If you like, you know, heartfelt, sincere movies about 3 friends, you know, not quite as interesting as Stand By Me. This is, you know, it's good. All right. That was Sergio Barrera. I am Paul Britton. This is Real to Real Talk. Thanks for coming by. We'll catch you next week. Bye, everybody.